Wild West was where speed could mean the difference between life and death. Outlaws, law enforcement officers, and gunslingers all had one thing in common. They needed to be fast on the draw. But who was the quickest of them all? From legendary sheriffs to infamous duels at high noon, history is full of stories about lightning-fast shooters. Some became famous for their deadly accuracy, while others built their reputations on pure speed. Today, we're ranking the fastest gunslingers in Wild West history. So, holster up, partner, and let's see who ruled the frontier. Opening the floor at number 10 is Clay Allison. Clay Allison was born around 1841 in Tennessee. He fought in the Civil War, but the Confederate Army kicked him out because doctors diagnosed him with a condition that made him partly epileptic and partly maniacal. Translation: he was unpredictable and probably a little crazy. But that didn't stop him from rejoining the fight later under the famous General Nathan Bedford Forrest. After the war, he headed west and tried to settle down as a rancher. But let's be honest, Clay Allison was not the kind of guy who could live a quiet life. Allison wasn't just fast with a gun. He was ridiculously fast. He could shoot and reload before most men could even pull their weapons. And if that wasn't enough, he once killed a man while lying on his back. Clay Allison would have won blindfolded if there had been a speed shooting contest in the Wild West. One of his most famous gunfights happened in 1874 when a rival gunslinger, Chunk Colbert, came to town looking for revenge. Instead of fighting immediately, the two spent the day drinking and gambling together. Later, Colbert invited Allison to dinner, secretly planning to kill him. But when Colbert reached for his gun under the table, he accidentally hit the wood, giving Allison just enough time to draw and shoot him in the head. When someone asked why he had dinner with a man who wanted to kill him, Allison simply replied, "Because I didn't want to send a man to hell on an empty stomach." Number 9. Bat Masterson. Bat Masterson was born Bartholomew William Barclay Masterson in 1853. Yes, that's a long name. His family moved from Canada to Kansas, where young Bat grew up with a taste for adventure. Like many men back then, he became a buffalo hunter, spending long days shooting bison on the open plains. But Bat wasn't the kind of guy who wanted a quiet life. He soon made his way to Dodge City, Kansas, one of the wildest towns in the West. If you wanted action, Dodge City was the place to be, full of outlaws, gamblers, and plenty of gunfights. And Bat? He fit right in. By the late 1870s, Bat had earned a reputation as a fast and deadly shooter. He became a deputy sheriff under Wyatt Earp, working to clean up Dodge City. Together, they faced off against some of the roughest criminals in the West. Bat wasn't just quick with a gun, he was also smart. He knew that in a gunfight, speed was everything. In 1876, he and his brother Ed were in a Texas saloon when Melvin King picked a fight. King shot Ed, but Bat was faster. He shot King before the outlaw even had time to react. Unlike many of his fellow gunslingers, Bat had a special skill. He knew when to walk away. This is probably why he lived long while many others ended up in unmarked graves. He wasn't just a lawman, but also a professional gambler, traveling across the West, winning money at poker tables, and taking a job as a bodyguard. He even stopped by Tombstone, Arizona, where he met with Wyatt Earp again. But Bat had a talent for avoiding trouble, so he left before the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. Number 8. Tom Horn. If there was ever a man in the Wild West who could have put professional gunslinger on his business card, it was Tom Horn. He wasn't just another trigger-happy cowboy looking for trouble. He was the trouble. Tom Horn was born in 1860 in Missouri, and, like most Wild West legends, he didn't start as a stone-cold killer. He started as a farm boy, probably shoveling manure and dreaming of a life with more excitement and fewer cows. By his teenage years, he had enough of farm life and made his way west, quickly proving himself as a capable scout, translator, and tracker for the U.S. Army during the Apache Wars. But here's the thing about hunting Apaches. You either get good at shooting or don't live long enough to worry about it. Horn, of course, got good. His skills with a rifle became legendary, and his ability to track a man over miles of unforgiving terrain was almost supernatural. After his time with the Army, Horn developed a particular set of skills that made him highly employable to the right people. He drifted into law enforcement, working as a deputy sheriff and a Pinkerton detective. But enforcing the law didn't quite pay as well as bending it, so Horn found his true calling: a hired gun. Cattle ranchers in Wyoming and Colorado had a problem. Rustlers, a fancy word for cattle thieves, were stealing their livestock. They needed someone who could send a very clear message to these thieves, preferably one written in lead. Enter Tom Horn. For a hefty fee, Horn would hunt down anyone suspected of rustling cattle and eliminate them, with no questions asked and no evidence required. His preferred method? A long-range rifle shot from a hidden position. If you suddenly heard a crack in the distance and your friend dropped dead, congratulations, you just met Tom Horn. Horn was so efficient that cattle thieves started vanishing faster than a plate of biscuits at a cowboy camp. His reputation spread, and so did his bank account. Number 7. Doc Holliday. Most dentists clean your teeth. Doc Holliday could do that too, but he was better at putting bullets in outlaws. Despite being sick with tuberculosis, he became one of the fastest and deadliest gunslingers in the Wild West. Armed with his shiny nickel-plated Colt Thunderer, Doc didn't waste time talking. If you messed with him, you were already dead. Born in 1851 in Griffin, Georgia, he was a bright young man who attended dental school in Philadelphia. Yes, you heard that right. One of the Wild West's most dangerous men once politely asked people to open wide. But life had other plans. In his early 20s, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, the 19th century version of a death sentence. Instead of settling down and accepting his fate, Doc decided, if I'm going to die anyway, I might as well do it in style. So, he packed up and headed west, hoping the dry air would help his condition. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But what he did find was a talent for gambling, drinking, and shooting anyone who gave him trouble. Even though he constantly coughs up blood, Doc Holliday was still one of the fastest shooters in history. His gun of choice? A nickel-plated Colt Thunderer, a revolver that was just as flashy as it was deadly. Most gunslingers needed a few seconds to aim and shoot. Doc needed less than one. He didn't waste time talking or waiting for his opponent to draw. Doc had already fired when they reached for their gun. His accuracy was just as scary. While other cowboys might miss, Doc never did. Wyatt Earp said, "Doc was the deadliest man with a six-shooter I ever saw." And coming from Wyatt, that meant something. Doc Holliday wasn't just a great shooter, but a fiercely loyal friend. His best friend was Wyatt Earp, a lawman who always got into trouble with outlaws. And Doc was there whenever Wyatt was in danger, ready to fight. The most famous example? The gunfight at the OK Corral. In 1881, in Tombstone, Arizona, Wyatt Earp and his brothers were about to face off against a gang of outlaws. Doc, sick as ever, still grabbed his gun and said, "Let's do this." When the bullets started flying, Doc took down Tom McClory and injured Frank McClory, making sure Wyatt survived the battle. But that wasn't the only time he risked his life for his friend. When Wyatt later went on a revenge mission, hunting down outlaws who had killed his brother, Doc went with him. Most men would have stayed in bed with an illness like his. Doc, he rode into gunfights like he had nothing to lose, because he didn't. Most Wild West gunfighters died in duels, shootouts, or ambushes. But Doc Holliday was different. After surviving countless battles, he died in bed. On November 8, 1887, in a hotel in Colorado, his tuberculosis finally caught up with him. Number 6. Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp would be the headliner if the Wild West had a Hall of Fame for coolness under pressure. While other gunslingers relied on flashy tricks and wild shootouts, Earp played it smart, calculating, composed, and deadly accurate. He wasn't the type to shoot first in a bar fight just to prove a point, but if you pushed him, let's just say you wouldn't be around to regret it. Unlike some of his more reckless counterparts, Wyatt Earp didn't see gunfighting as a sport or a way to show off. He treated it like a last resort, a grim necessity rather than a pastime. He didn't draw his gun to scare people. If he pulled it, he intended to use it. And when he did, he never missed. Earp had a simple but terrifying strategy. Wait for the other guy to panic, then calmly put a bullet where it mattered most. While others fumbled with their holsters or wasted shots in a blind panic, Earp would take his time, aim, and fire one shot. Just one. Because that's all he needed. If Hollywood had made movies about him in his time, he wouldn't be the gunslinger flipping his revolvers and shooting from the hip like a circus act. No, he'd be standing there cool as a frozen whiskey bottle, watching his opponents sweat before taking them out with surgical precision. The most famous moment of Wyatt Earp's career was, without a doubt, the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881. And despite what the name suggests, this wasn't some epic duel in a grand arena. It was a messy, chaotic 30-second shootout in a dusty alleyway. Earp, his brothers Virgil and Morgan, and his best friend Doc Holliday, a sickly dentist who could shoot faster than most outlaws, faced off against the notorious Clanton and McClory gang. These cowboys had been causing trouble in Tombstone, Arizona, and the Earps had had enough. When the shooting started, bullets flew in all directions. Most people would have ducked for cover, but Wyatt Earp? He just walked forward right into the gunfire without so much as flinching. Legend has it that a cowboy fired straight at him, and the bullet just bounced off his coat. Now, was Wyatt Earp bulletproof? Probably not. But if confidence alone could deflect bullets, then he may be. While the others scrambled and missed their shots, Wyatt took down his targets with mechanical precision. He wasn't the fastest gun in the West, but was unbeatable at staying calm and landing his shots. Taking 5th place is Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was born Henry McCarty in 1859, though he later went Shyam H. Bonney because, let's be honest, Billy the Kid sounds way cooler than Hank McCarty. His early life was rough. Orphaned as a child, he bounced around from foster homes to odd jobs, quickly realizing that honest work was overrated and crime was a much faster way to make a living. By the time he was a teenager, he was already stealing cattle, horses, and occasionally the spotlight in every Wild West storybook. Billy wasn't just a criminal, he was a gun-slinging phenomenon. He could draw, fire, and reload faster than most men could decide what to have for breakfast. Stories claim he could fire 2 revolvers with insane accuracy, making him the Wild West equivalent of a human Gatling gun. It's unclear whether Billy trained for this or was just naturally gifted at making people regret standing in front of him. One story tells of a time when a group of men ambushed Billy. Instead of panicking as any reasonable person would, he grinned, pulled his Colts, and dropped them before they even had time to yell, "It's him!" His speed wasn't just about drawing his guns, but about thinking, moving, and leaving his enemies wondering what happened. Billy's name became infamous during the Lincoln County War, 1878, a messy feud between rival ranchers, businessmen, and law enforcement officers. Caught up in the chaos, Billy ended up siding with the Regulators, a group of vigilantes with an impressive ability to turn any disagreement into a gunfight. This war turned Billy into a full-fledged outlaw, as he and his gang went on a shooting spree against their enemies, including Sheriff William Brady, whom Billy helped turn into Swiss cheese. At this point, Billy had officially made the most wanted list in the Wild West, which back then meant bounty posters, angry poses, and every lawman within 100 miles looking to claim the reward. Number 4. Jesse James. Jesse James was born in 1847 in Missouri. He grew up on a farm but joined a group of Confederate fighters known as bushwhackers when the Civil War started. These men didn't fight like regular soldiers. They used ambushes, surprise attacks, and hit-and-run tactics. Jesse learned to shoot quickly, ride fast, and disappear before anyone could catch him. After the war, life was tough for ex-Confederate fighters. Instead of returning to farming, Jesse decided crime was a better option. He teamed up with his older brother, Frank, and other outlaws to form the James Younger Gang. Together, they became one of the most feared criminal groups in the West. Jesse James didn't just rob banks. He did it in style. Sometimes he and his gang would walk into a bank pretending to be regular customers. Then, when the moment was right, they would pull out their guns and take over. Trains were another favorite target. Jesse and his gang would wait for a train to slow down, then jump aboard. They would tie up the crew, take money from the safe, and collect valuables from passengers. Many people admired him, believing he only stole from the rich. Jesse was not too picky. If you had money, he was happy to take it. One of the main reasons Jesse James survived for so long was his speed with a gun. He could draw and fire before most men even reached for their weapons. His fast reflexes saved his life in shootouts with law enforcement officers, bounty hunters, and rival outlaws. There are stories of Jesse escaping impossible situations. In one saloon fight, he was surrounded by 5 armed men. Instead of giving up, he pulled out his guns, shot his way out, and jumped out of a window to escape. That was just a normal day for Jesse. Number 3. John Wesley Hardin. If there was ever a man who took gunfighting too seriously, it was John Wesley Hardin. He was so fast that he had already fired by the time most men reached for their guns. Known as one of the deadliest outlaws in Texas, Hardin had a bad temper and an even worse habit of settling arguments with bullets. He claimed to have killed more than 40 men, though some say he stopped counting after a while. John Wesley Hardin was born in 1853 to a preacher, but he was no saint. By the time he was 15, he had already shot and killed a man. By his 20s, he was one of Texas's fastest and most feared gunslingers. Unlike most outlaws who robbed banks or stole horses, Hardin preferred gunfights. He did not wait for trouble to find him. He brought it wherever he went. If someone looked at him the wrong way, he was ready to draw his gun. And in the Wild West, being fast meant staying alive. Hardin was one of the quickest guns in the West. He once bragged that he could shoot before most men even touched their guns. And judging by how many people he killed, he was not lying. He was not just fast, he was deadly accurate. While some cowboys fired wildly, hoping to hit something, Hardin ensured every bullet found its mark. If there had been shooting competitions back then, he probably would have won every time, assuming he did not shoot the other contestants first. Hardin spent most of his life running from the law. Texas Rangers, bounty hunters, and sheriffs wanted to catch him, but he was always one step ahead. He changed his name, dyed his hair, and even tried laying low. But trouble followed him everywhere. Eventually, in 1877, the Rangers caught him on a train. When they burst into his train car, Hardin reached for his gun, but this time he was too slow. They knocked him out and threw him in jail. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Number 2, Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill Hickok was not just fast, he was lightning fast. People said he could draw and fire his Colt revolvers so quickly that his opponents only realized they had lost when they were already on their way to the afterlife. Unlike many gunfighters who relied on wild, desperate shooting, Hickok was known for taking just one shot. That was all he needed. He was famous for remaining calm, aiming carefully, and pulling the trigger with absolute certainty. He carried 2 revolvers which he wore butt forward in his holsters. This was an unusual style, but it worked for him. Instead of drawing with the traditional overhand motion, he would reach across his body, pull his guns out in a reverse grip, and spin them into firing position. It was both effective and theatrical. You would expect the kind of thing from a man who knew how to put on a show. The Wild West had plenty of gunfights, but most were chaotic brawls in saloons or dusty streets. Hickok, however, is credited with being part of the first official Western duel. It happened in 1865 in Springfield, Missouri, and it all started over something completely ridiculous: a pocket watch. Hickok and a man named Davis Tutt had been gambling against each other, and as gamblers often do, they started arguing about who owed who. Tutt claimed Hickok was in debt and took his gold pocket watch as collateral. Hickok was not happy about this. He warned Tutt not to wear the watch in public unless he wanted a fight. Tutt, either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, strolled into the town square the next day with the watch dangling for all to see. Hickok stepped into the street, and the 2 men squared off like something from an old Western movie. They took their positions about 75 yards apart, which was a ridiculously long distance for a pistol duel. Tutt fired first and missed. Hickok took his time, aimed carefully, and fired a single shot. Tutt grabbed his chest, stumbled backward, and fell dead. Hickok casually walked over, returned his watch, and continued his day. The duel became legendary, turning Hickok into a celebrity gunslinger. Newspapers ate the story up, romanticizing the idea of the lone gunman who never missed. This duel cemented his reputation as one of his time's fastest and deadliest shooters. Taking our number 1 spot is Bob Munden, the fastest gun who ever lived. If there was ever a man who could outdraw the devil himself, it was Bob Munden. This guy was so fast with a gun that if you blinked, you missed the whole show. Literally. Bob Munden was not just a great shooter, he was a phenomenon. He could draw his revolver, fire, and hit his target in less than 0.02 seconds. That is faster than the human eye can process movement. To put that into perspective, It takes most people longer to realize they must scratch their nose. When an opponent even thought about reaching for their gun, Bob had already fired, hit the target, and probably had time to sip his coffee. And this was not just some barstool legend. It was scientifically tested. Bob appeared on numerous television programs where experts measured his speed with high-speed cameras. The results? He was officially the fastest gunslinger who ever lived. If there were an Olympic event for quick draws, he would have taken gold, silver, and bronze all at once. Some people shoot for fun, others shoot for survival. Bob Munden was shot because he was born to do it. He treated his revolvers like an extension of his own body. He handled them like an artist with a paintbrush, whether a Colt 45 Peacemaker or a specialized competition pistol. His tricks were jaw-dropping. He could hit a playing card's edge from 20 feet away. He could shoot two balloons at different targets so fast that both seemed to pop simultaneously. He once fired 5 shots into a target so quickly that the sound of all 5 rounds seemed like a single gunshot. It was like watching a Wild West movie on fast forward, except this was real life. Bob did not just stick to revolvers. He was just as deadly with rifles and shotguns. He could shoot a target the size of a coin at long range without sweat. Some shooters spend years mastering one firearm. Bob mastered them all. If it fired bullets, he could turn it into a magic trick. Imagine Bob Munden facing off against the greatest Wild West gunfighters: Wild Bill Hickok, Jesse James, Billy the Kid. It would not even be close. While they were still thinking about reaching for their guns, Bob would have already shot, reloaded, and probably walked away to grab a sandwich. As fast as those old gunslingers were, Bob had something they did not: modern training, technology, and a lifetime of practice under controlled conditions. He was not fighting for his life in dark saloons or dusty streets. In the end, the fastest hand wasn't always the last one standing, but in the lawless frontier, it certainly gave them an edge. Thanks for watching.